Let's do some relaxing art with these Arrtx acrylic markers. So I was given the 36 color set. Let's take a look at these. And I am loving the variety of colors here. So I've been using Sharpie creative markers and Posca paint pens, and I do not have nearly this wide variety of colors. So as you can see, I'm swatching a few of these out just to kind of see how they flow on watercolor paper. And let's write a word, shall we? For some reason, the word alligator popped into my head. It's kind of a fun word to write. It's actually a weird word when you think about it. Alligator. Alligator. Anyway, so I'm really liking how these flow on the watercolor paper. I wanted to do a little test with some other colors on top of the swatches. So if I ever use these for my Zen doodling art meditations, I wanted to get a sense for how these feel. And I'm really liking how it feels on the paper. You can see here, you can actually see the color and the paint through the pen. They're brush tip. They're more fine tip than I'm used to with acrylic markers. And I really like that for control and detail. I'm just testing how a couple of these lighter colors look when layered over a darker color. Let's get to some projects, shall we? So I'm going to show you first on this little strip of test paper. This is a technique that I do all the time, typically with watercolor brush pens. I call these Moody meditation rocks, and they kind of look like geodes or crystals to me. So going from light to dark, you can use 3 to 4, maybe 5 colors, depending on what options you have available. I'm going to do layers of 3 colors, or I should say 3 shades or 3 tones of each color here. But I used to do this technique for hours, literally for hours. This was something I would do to relax while watching TV or just listening to music or sitting in quiet. But this particular technique of drawing these tiny little moody meditation rocks over and over and over really helps me focus and calms me down. And then when I do this on the larger piece of paper, there's just something about lining up little things all in a row, organizing them that just makes my mind feel so clear. It's satisfying. So I'm testing all my colors out on this strip of paper first, and then I'm going to go into the larger paper you see underneath and repeat this process several times. So I'll end up with a bunch of rows of these moody meditation rocks. So first, I'm just going to take a pencil and dot in so I have equal spacing, and I'm kind of, marking for myself where each of the Moody meditation rocks is going to go on the paper. And then I'm going to do the gray rocks pretty much across the paper, with the exception of I'll leave one space in each row to add in a colorful Moody meditation rock. And I actually created a deck of cards using this technique with watercolor brush pens. I've featured that deck of cards in other videos. Maybe I'll do a feature on that in the future. It was a Kickstarter project. I got crowdfunded, was able to publish this deck of cards, but it was using this same technique just with watercolor brush pens. And um, the aesthetic at the end is really relaxing and satisfying to look at. But this whole process, just working from light to dark across the paper, row by row, again, is just so satisfying and calming. I really get into a flow state with this process, and I could do this. I could do hundreds of these, I'm pretty sure, in one sitting. I just really love this particular process. And I have a couple other projects I want to show you using these acrylic markers. So I am going to time lapse this video a bit, but wanted to show you I'm adding that pop of color with this red Moody meditation rock. And when I do this process too, I like to incorporate color symbolism and really invoke a mood. And I'm going to use all of my different colors to do one colorful rock on each row. So there's not necessarily, specific color intention or color symbolism here, but just wanted to add that that's an option that you could incorporate when you're choosing which color Moody meditation rocks to include in your work. But the gray gives it a nice calming, grounding effect, kind of keeps the overall piece from being overwhelming or having too much color. And sometimes I like that when there's a lot of color, kind of helps me feel like I'm taking chaos in my brain and putting it on paper. And it's also nice to tone it down a bit once in a while. So we'll add a blue rock in this one. Again, working from light to dark, from the inside to the outside. And here you can see I'm almost finished with this piece. This took me about 30 minutes total. I'm used to this process. I've done it a lot. This could take you up to an hour to do the 5 rows of what do I have? 6 rocks on each row. This is certainly a process you could stop and come back to at any time because it's so simple to just pick up right where you left off. So obviously you don't have to do this in one sitting, but that's about how long it took, just so expectations are there. And there is our Moody Meditation rocks using the Arrtx acrylic markers. Really happy with how this turned out. Okay, project number 2. So I already put some quick sticks on the paper. So these are fast drying paint sticks. I wanted to experiment with some mixed media, see how these acrylic markers color on top of the swatches. And I'm really happy with how the color's coming out. This technique I've done a lot in other videos. I call this the scribble blob art meditation. With a loose grip, you outline the shapes that you see on the paper, and it's a loose outline, as you can see. It's really expressive. This can really help you get frustration or stress out onto the paper, but you don't have to be stressed to enjoy this particular technique. And typically I'll outline these shapes with a black Sharpie permanent marker and then go back in with colored paint markers. But I kind of like looking at the, yellow on yellow and the pink on pink here, etc. I'm really quite happy with how this is turning out as far as the Arrtx acrylic markers on top of the Quick Stick swatches. And once you've loosely outlined the major shapes that you see in the swatches, you can go back and do some scribbles, some tighter scribbles, some dots or stippling. Again, I just kind of like to go with the flow here. This is completely random, or, maybe it's not random. Maybe it's intuition. That almost feels too deep for this. It's really just, for me, it's like just processing emotion and releasing pent up tension. That's what this process really does for me. So ultimately, I'm really happy with how these acrylic markers turned out. I like this result. It felt really good. That's the most important thing. It's the process, not the result. But I'm happy with the result. Okay, now our third and final project. Wanted to do a fun rainbow holiday tree with some doodles on top. So I'm going to go in and color each of these sections a color of the rainbow, as you can see. And this is a mixed media sketchbook, by the way. I like textured paper, so I think I was saying this at the beginning and then got distracted, but I tend to use watercolor paper for most of my projects because of the way it sounds and feels with acrylic markers. But I also wanted to try a few things on my mixed media sketchbook. I do get questions about mixed media paper sometimes. You can certainly use these markers on a lot of different kinds of paper. And when in doubt, try it. I always say go for it, experiment, explore. Why not? This is low stakes here. Okay, now that we've got our colors down, I want to try out this white acrylic marker and see how it goes on top of the color. So I'm going with really simple doodles and patterns. And I really like how the white is showing up on top of these different colors. And I did mention these are brush tip, so I tend to use gel pens or bullet tip acrylic markers, so there's less movements in the tip of the marker itself. But this one does have a little bit more flexibility than I'm used to, so it does take a little bit more control to keep those fine lines consistent. But it feels really good. This is a very easy technique and beginner friendly. So I tried to just pick some super simple doodles here that are pretty easy to replicate regardless of experience or skill level, whatever. I like to do all ages, all skills friendly works, especially with art meditation. So, doodling like this is a very relaxing, satisfying process. And you could totally make holiday cards out of this design. So, I certainly didn't come up with this, by the way. I've seen these holiday trees before and just think they're so fun and delightful. Had to do one this year. All right, peeling off that tape. How fun is that? So I have a thin washi tape here, and then I just used blue painter's tape, which worked really well on this mixed media paper. So we're revealing the nice crisp edges underneath. There we go, our third project with the Arrtx acrylic markers. Thanks for watching.